What can we expect this summer from the New York Giants 2025 draft class members? I'm going to break each one down for you coming up next here on the Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, credential member of the New York Giants media for Locked On, as well as for New York Giants on SI, which is where you can find all of my written work. And we've been doing quite a lot, I might add. And as always, we welcome on in our Blue Crew community members, our everydayers, our newcomers, and everybody in between. Thank you so much for spending part of your day with us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. And if you make us your first listen of the day, we thank you for doing that. That is appreciated. All right, on today's Locked On Giants podcast, first off, happy Friday. We made it through pretty much the first unofficial week of training camp. The Giants rookies have been in since Tuesday. They've been basically doing a lot of meetings, some walkthrough type of stuff on the field, from what I understand. The media hasn't been in the building, but that's typically what they do when they bring the rookies in. And then, of course, next week on Tuesday, the veterans will report. First practice will be Wednesday. There'll be a brief acclimation period where there'll be no pads. And then, of course, the pads will go on, and then the fun will really start. So what I'm going to do on today's show is I'm going to go through each Giants rookie draft pick from this year. And I'm going to kind of give you my expectations, what I'm going to be looking for, kind of like a little overview, things to kind of watch with these guys as we go through training camp and as we go through the preseason. So we'll start with number 3, or the first rounders, I should say, number 3 being Abdul Carter. And then we'll go all the way down to the later rounds in this class. So again, welcome on in. Let's get into it. All right, we'll kick things off with Abdul Carter. Now, the big question for Abdul Carter is, where is he going to line up? All right, a lot of people want to know where he's going to line up. Now, I think he's going to line up all over the field, kind of like how Micah Parsons did in his rookie season. But I would not be shocked if we see Carter playing a little bit more as an inside linebacker just to start things off. Now, why do I say that? Well, because that was the position he played primarily at Penn State before he made the conversion last year. And it was a successful conversion. Let's not sell him short. But I think in terms of getting Carter on the field right away, the Giants might have him line up more so as an inside linebacker or in the box as opposed to outside, except when he's maybe, spelling Kayvon Thibodeau and Brian Burns. Now, that doesn't mean that Carter will not be on the outside. There will be instances where he will line up on the outside. You might see him at times line up in the slot, which he did a couple of times at Penn State. But I think, in terms of him getting on the field right away, inside linebacker might be the way to go. And the reason why I say that, for those of you who are probably saying, why would they line him up at inside linebacker? The reason why I say that, I go back to something that Shane Bowen, the defensive coordinator, said about Abdul Carter in the spring. And he basically said that Abdul Carter needs to learn to be a complete outside linebacker. Presumably he was referring to the NFL level. So, it's like any player who made a position switch. Abdul Carter is, last year at Penn State was his first year playing really outside linebacker, played inside linebacker for most of his career. So he's still kind of new to the outside linebacker position. Now, the good news is this kid has the tools. He has the speed. He has the quickness, the agility, the bend, everything you could possibly want in an outside linebacker. But I think initially what they're going to look to do, if they're going to get him and Thibodeau and Burns on the field at the same time, they're going to play Carter in the box. That's just my guess here. So let me give you some numbers just from Carter's college career, this via Pro Football Focus. Carter at Penn State played 993 box snaps to 759 snaps on the outside. Most of those outside snaps, remember, came last year. So really, last year was his first year really playing outside. Prior to that, he had something like 70 snaps that he played on the outside. So he's still kind of new to that position. So I think, again, in terms of familiarity and in terms of building up the confidence, we'll see Carter probably more on the, between the tackles than we will outside of the tackles. But that being said, he's a quick learner. I do think before the summer is over, we'll start to see more of a split with, the outside linebacker being the favorite position for him. But to start things off, I think the Giants are going to have him do what's familiar to him and then kind of work their way and expand. And then ultimately the goal with Abdul Carter is to get him on the field in a variety of different ways, not just limit him to outside linebacker, don't limit him to inside linebacker, get him on the field as often as you can and in as many roles as you can so that opposing offenses have to account for him wherever he lines up, because this kid is going to be a good one. He really is. I'm so excited to see what he does once the pads go on and the offensive lineman can actually do the blocking like they're supposed to, unlike what they did in the spring when they couldn't really block the pass rushers. So Abdul Carter, I'm very excited to see. I think he's going to be a fan favorite this summer. Those of you who might be going to training camp, keep an eye on him because the coaches are going to have a lot on his plate for him to absorb, and I think he's going to handle it just fine. Okay, Jackson Dart, the other first-round pick. Now, I know there are some out there who just say, you know what, just let Dart compete for the starting job. What are we wasting time for? Folks, Russell Wilson's going to be the starter. And that's not necessarily a reflection on Jackson Dart. At some point, Jackson Dart will be the starter on this offense, but he is not ready to be the starter. And anybody who is saying that he should be given a fair shot to compete against Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston for the starting job, take a step back here and let's look at some things here. All right. What the Giants still need to see with Jackson Dart is how is he going to do when things don't go according to script? All right. So when he's under pressure, when his first read is taken away, how quickly can he get to his second and third reads? This is all stuff he didn't really have to deal with a whole lot when he was at Ole Miss. So there's going to be different scenarios thrown at him. And oh, by the way, I've said this before on the show. I'll say it again now. Brian Daboll, in his attempt to make sure that Jackson Dart is ready, is going to throw the unexpected at the kid. So you might see twists and stunts from the defense just to kind of see how he reacts, right? So there is a lot of boxes for Jackson Dart to check off before he's even ready to consider competing for the starting job. So again, if you're of the camp that Dart should be allowed to compete for the job, for the starting job, I think maybe you want to take your foot off the pedal there for a little bit because he's not ready yet. And I want to just give you a stat that I found interesting. This again from Pro Football Focus. Last year, when Dart was under pressure, he averaged 3.59 seconds to throw. Now you might think, okay, that's great. Offensive line did its job, gave him all kinds of time. He was able to buy time. But he absorbed 28 sacks when he was under pressure, and he had that 3.59 seconds to throw. So that just meant, folks, that he was hanging on to the ball. And that's another thing that he's going to need to work on, that they're going to need to smooth out in his game. And they will. They will. He will get there. But, to throw him out there, I mean, really, the whole reason why they brought in Russell Wilson was as the bridge. So to suggest that Dart should challenge him now at this point in the development, I don't think it makes sense. And I don't think the Giants think it makes sense. And I don't think they're going to do it, to be honest with you. All right. Coming up in the next segment, we're going to look at the next group of Giants draft picks, Darius Alexander and Cam Skattebo. So that's coming up right after this. Hey, Giant fans, ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place so that in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. With Monarch Money, I've been able to get a complete glance at my household spending every month, all in one easy to use app. This has helped with budgeting and planning, not just for the upcoming week, but also for the short and long term savings goals. So go on, take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use promo code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Again, that's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. Coming up next week, we're going to be busy here on the Locked On Giants podcast. At some point, I'm going to have Ed Valentine on. We're going to kind of do a little preview, if you will, get a catch up on what to expect at camp, not just with the rookies, but with everything. I'm also scheduled to have on the show Judy Batista from the NFL Network. So that's going to be at some point next week as well. So, yeah, we're going to start off the week with a couple of guests, and then we're going to get right into training camp. On Wednesday, which is the first media avail, the Giants are making available Joe Shane to the media. So I'll have a recap of that, some takeaways. And of course, you'll have practice reports and all kinds of stuff here on the Locked On Giants podcast. And of course, my practice is if the Giants have a practice, I'm going to get you a show, even if it's just a quick show on the weekend. So that is what is coming up, and hope you will be part of the Locked On Giants podcast. And again, thank you for being one of our listeners. All right, let's get back to our topic at hand, which is we are looking at the Giants class of 2025. Each member, what are we going to be looking for? What can we expect when we get to training camp and these guys put the pads on? We just did the 2 first-round picks, Abdul Carter, Jackson Dart. Now let's look at round 3 and round 4. Round 3 being Darius Alexander, round 4 being Cam Scatterbill. Okay, we'll start with Darius Alexander. Now, really, with Alexander, he didn't practice much, if at all. I don't think he practiced much outside of the rookie camp, if I remember correctly. So in the spring, kind of, something was going on there. What that was, I don't know, but this much I do know. When you're coming from a small school and you're missing that spring practice reps that are so valuable as a rookie, that could potentially set you back. Now, the one thing that Darius Alexander has going for him is that at Toledo, he was kind of a man amongst boys as far as the competition goes. So, you would think that catching up shouldn't be too hard for him, but the level of competition is a little different than what it was at the University of Toledo. So what can we expect for him for his role? They're not going to put him out there for every snap or every down, I should say. Is he going to be primarily a run stopper or a pass rusher? All right. So my thinking is he will probably see a lot of his initial work as a run stopper. It's been said that teaching a young defensive lineman to play against the run is a little bit easier than playing against the pass, all right, or doing the pass rush, I should say. So they have to, develop his toolbox, his pass rush plan. All right, this is all stuff that basically he could have been working on in the spring with the on-field reps, and he didn't get a chance to do that. But run defense, that should be something he should be able to slip right in and contribute on. All right, now just some numbers again. From his pass rush, the numbers were pretty impressive. I mentioned he was a man amongst boys. He had 101 pressures and 13 sacks against the competition he faced at the University of Toledo. That's pretty good. But again, the competition he faced when he was at Toledo, not necessarily guys that he's going to see in the NFL level. Going to be a significant upgrade. So it's going to, there's a lot of technique work, a lot of tricks that I'm sure Andre Patterson and Brian Cox, the defensive line coaches, will teach him so that he can become more of a well-rounded NFL defensive lineman. The tools are there, though. I think if he's healthy, he's going to see a lot of snaps. The Giants, for those of you who are wondering, they haven't released any pup lists just yet. So I don't know what Alexander has been able to do. I don't know if he's going to be able to practice. I do know this: if he misses any practice time this summer, that's going to set him back even further. And hopefully whatever he had going on in the spring, hopefully that's been resolved and he's ready to go. Okay. Cam Scatterboo, running back. Now, this guy I think is going to be a favorite of a lot of people because he's a throwback. Think in terms of the old blue collar running backs that the Giants had, the guys that just showed up with their lunch pails and just pounded the opposition into submission and whatnot. The question with Cam Scatterboo, and this is maybe my concern with him, is yes, he's strong, but most rookies are not NFL strong. You think of Cam Scatterboo, you think of, okay, he's going to bring the power to the running game, the power rushing aspect of it. And yes, he could certainly bring that, but how is that going to translate against the bigger defensive linemen that he's going to face, the bigger linebackers, the quicker linebackers? Is he going to be able to knock those guys over like he did in college? Right now, in college, his final year at Arizona State, he had 1,202 yards after contact. So that was an average of 4.09 yards after contact per attempt. So pretty good. He forced 103 missed tackles. Again, pretty impressive, but I don't think he's going to do that kind of production at the NFL level, not against upgraded competition. So that being said, I think when we talk about Cam Scatterboo, there's two things that I think we have to also discuss. Number one, how is his pass pro going to be? Now, he did it fine in college, but this is the NFL. So I think if we're looking at Cam Scatterboo, the ticket for him initially to get on the field is probably going to be as a receiver, because in the spring, before his injury popped up, which I'll get to in a moment, he actually looked pretty good and pretty smooth as a receiver out of the backfield. He has a 77.1 career reception rate, only 5 career drops, no fumbles, 57 missed forced tackles as a receiver. Not too bad. If he can bring some of that into the game at the pro level, that could be his ticket initially onto the field, especially when you consider the struggles that Tyrone Tracy had as a receiver out of the backfield, which I still am absolutely perplexed why that is an issue with him, or why that was an issue considering he was once a college receiver. So with Scatterboo, again, I think that's how they're going to break him in, probably as a receiver, and just kind of gradually get him involved in the running game as he plays, learns to play the angles, as he gets stronger and a little bit, more sure of what he's doing out there. Now, I mentioned the injury. He was another one who missed a good chunk of the spring with an undisclosed injury. What that injury is, again, I don't know. Brian Dable didn't tell us any specifics, but Scatterboo's got to get out there. If he does not get out there, then, like as I said with Darius Alexander, Scatterboo's going to fall behind. And you're going to have to question whether or not he's going to, how much he's going to be able to contribute right away. So for that reason, that's why, again, when people say, oh, they should get rid of Devin Singletary, they're not getting rid of Devin Singletary, right? Devin Singletary will probably enter camp as running back 2. And he will remain running back 2 until further notice, until Scatterboo catches up and develops, and is able to do all the things they need him to do other than just carry the rock. So, you might have to wait a little bit before you really see Scatterboo carrying the rock and being the thunder and lightning that has been missing from this Giants passing running game for so long. But when it happens, I think it's going to be quite fun to watch. All right, Giant fans, coming up next, we're going to do the last of the draft picks, Marcus Bowe, Thomas Fidone, the second, and Corey Black. So please don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to Locked On Giants. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. And again, training camp is here next week. So the plan is I'm going to practice. As soon as I get home, I'll do a show, get that out to you. We'll do clips. I'll do some on-site stuff this year. That's at least in the plan, to do some on-site reporting right from the field. So hope you will stay tuned to the Locked On Giants podcast channel here on YouTube. That's where I'm going to put all the videos and stuff on, and hope you will check that out. All right, let's continue. We're going to look at the last of the Giants class of 2025. What can we expect? What's realistic for them? Let's kick things off with Marcus Bowe, the 5th round pick. All right, Marcus Bowe, offensive lineman who in the springtime primarily lined up at tackle, worked mostly on the right side. So right away you kind of think, okay, maybe he's the heir apparent to Jermaine Illuminor's right tackle spot. Jermaine Illuminor going into the final year of his contract this year, by the way. Could they maybe play Bowe at guard? I think at some point they will, but I also think, they're going to not throw too much at him initially, because at the NFL level, defensive linemen are so much quicker and craftier. So you want to get these younger offensive linemen settled in at one position before you start expanding their, plate, if you will. Marcus Bowe, though, when I look at him, I see a potential for him being the next David Deal. David Deal, when he was here, played every position on the line except for center. But David Deal didn't do it right away. He had to gradually work his way into the different positions because, as you all know, lining up at right tackle, a lot different than lining up at left tackle. Similarly, lining up at right guard, a lot different than lining up at left guard. So that's going to take some time if that's ideally what the Giants want in Bowe. But, some of the things you want to look for in his practice reps, pad level is going to be important. His hands, how quickly is he getting his hands into the chest of his whoever he's lining up against. So there's a lot of work to be done with Marcus Bowe. But I do think, the talent is there. I've been screaming about how the Giants really haven't added a whole lot of young offensive line depth to be developed. I think in Marcus Bowe, they have a guy who can develop into a potential starter. Not going to be that this year. I don't know how much he's actually going to play this year, but there is talent and stuff to build on. So again, I think eventually he's going to be the heir apparent at right tackle, but we'll see how the Giants play him. If they give him some snaps inside, or are they going to keep him primarily at offensive tackle? Okay, Thomas Fidone, one of the 7th round draft picks. Thomas Fidone, the second, is a tight end. And the big question is there a roster spot for him? I don't see the Giants keeping 4 tight ends. I really don't. I think, going in and again, not knowing the injury situation, Chris Manhertz did not practice in the spring, but whatever it was he had, he was able to stand on the field. So I don't know that it was a lower body issue. It could have been an upper body issue. I don't know. We'll find out if he passes his physical and is out on the field for day one. But I would think at this point, your 3 tight ends for the Giants, barring injury, will be Theo Johnson, Daniel Bellinger, and Chris Manhertz. Now, that being said, could there be a scenario where maybe the Giants move on from Bellinger? Possibly. I don't know that they will. If Thomas Fidone steps up and he plays just as well as Bellinger, could they say, you know what, maybe we look to trade Bellinger? I don't know that there would be a huge market for Bellinger, if any, at this point. But Fidone, the obstacle that he kind of has to overcome is because he had injuries in college, didn't really get a whole lot of experience. So he's not as complete of a tight end at this point as maybe Bellinger is. And Bellinger, I get it. He's been in the league a little longer than Fedoni has. But reception rate, let's take a look at that. Fedoni has caught 61 of 88 career pass targets. That's a 69.3 reception rate. Daniel Bellinger, he's done a lot better. I think his is closer to like 80 or 90%. I don't have the number in front of me, but it's higher, trust me. Now, Fedoni, we talk about the role of a tight end. They also have to block. How well can Fedoni do that? Now, I say this all the time. Rookies come in, they've got to add strength, they've got to add, technique, because you can't be all over the place with your pad level. So I just wonder if perhaps the lack of experience he has in college because of the injuries, the talent's there, but is that going to say, force the Giants to say, all right, you know what, we'll go with the 3 that we had last year and we'll put you, Thomas, on the practice squad. That's what I think is going to happen. If that does, I think that would probably be the first time a Joe Shane draft pick didn't make the roster out of camp, if I'm not mistaken. So there's always a first. But that being said, I just don't know how ready Fedoni is. I mean, he's got the size, he's got the hands. There's enough, to like about his game, but the experience is not there. So he's a little bit raw as a prospect. And, that's probably the reason why he fell to the 7th round. So that's going to be something to see how he develops over the course of the summer. And then finally, we have cornerback Corey Black. Now, Corey Black's ticket to the Giants' 53-man roster is probably going to be special teams. That's not to say he can't play cornerback at some point, but you look at the depth at the Giants cornerback and the way that stacks up. It's kind of like the situation with receiver where, once you start getting to receiver 4, 5, 6, and so forth, that guy's got to be able to contribute on special teams. Well, Corey Black, if he makes the roster, he's going to have to contribute on special teams. So it's not something he hasn't done before and not something that he hasn't had success with at college. So we'll see how that plays out. But, some intriguing talent there. And, you can never have too many good special teams players. And the Giants, the special teams last year, some of the units were good, some of them not so good. They're going to be looking to make sure that all of them this year are a lot better than they were last year. All right, Giant fans, that is going to do it for this edition of the Locked On Giants podcast. As always, thank you for tuning in and spending part of your day with us. Now, before we say goodbye, please, the Locked On NFL Top 100 is out right now on Locked On Sports Today. The NFL Top 100 was voted on by the NFL host of Locked On, and there were some stunners. If you didn't check out that show, there were some stunners, especially on the ranks of the Giants. So don't miss this special program and find out where all your favorite players were ranked. Subscribe to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want a condensed version, check out the Locked On Giants podcast Thursday show, the one I did yesterday when I went on mini rants about where some of the Giants place. So you can check that out and see where your favorite players ranked. All right. So that's, again, the Locked On NFL Top 100. All right, Giant fans, that will do it for me. Have a great weekend. I will see you bright and early on Monday with an all-new episode of Locked On Giants.